They laughed when the old woman covered her house with pillows, but when they discovered the reason, Mrs. Beverly Sullivan woke up that day knowing her life would change forever. The decision had been made weeks ago, but now she needed to act before anyone tried to stop her. Her children wouldn't understand, the neighbors would laugh, but she no longer cared about other people's judgments. It was when she started carrying the first old pillows from the storage shed that the neighbors stopped to watch. Mrs. Gladys, who lived in the house next door, almost dropped her coffee cup upon seeing the scene. "Beverly Sullivan, what are you doing?" she shouted from the window. "Minding my own business," replied the 73-year-old woman, without stopping from dragging a heavy sack full of old cushions. The small wooden house that had belonged to the family for 3 generations was about to take on a completely different appearance. Beverly Sullivan had spent the last 2 weeks buying used pillows, torn cushions, and anything soft she could find in the thrift stores and second-hand shops of the town of Oak Creek. "Mum, for God's sake, what is this?" Josepha appeared, her eldest daughter, breathless from having run from the bakery where she worked. "The neighbors called me saying you were doing something crazy." "It's not crazy, Brenda. It's necessary," Beverly Sullivan continued, nailing a faded purple pillow to the side wall of the house. "Necessary for what? To become the town's laughingstock?" The old woman stopped for a moment, wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, and looked directly into her daughter's eyes. "You wouldn't understand even if I explained." Brenda felt a lump in her throat. Ever since her father died 5 years ago, her mother had changed. She had become more withdrawn, more stubborn, more strange. But she had never done anything as absurd as this. "Then explain it to me," insisted Brenda. "Why are you covering our house with old pillows?" "Because I need to protect it." Beverly Sullivan went back to work, ignoring her daughter's exasperated tone. "Protect it from what?" "From the noise, from the pain, from the world." Brenda shook her head, not understanding anything. She grabbed her phone and dialed her brother. "Douglas, you need to come here now. Mom has finally lost her mind." On the other end of the line, Douglas sighed heavily. What did she do now? "She's covering the entire house with old pillows. The neighbors are all out on the street watching. It's an embarrassment, Douglas." "Wait, what do you mean covering the house?" "She's nailing pillow after pillow onto the outside walls. She's already covered half the front and is moving to the sides." Douglas, who worked as a salesman at the hardware store, dropped everything and ran out. In 20 minutes, he was at his mother's house, accompanied by his wife, Luciana. "Mom, you can't do this," said Douglas, trying to stay calm. "The neighbors will complain. The town hall will fine you. It's what, son?" "It's crazy." Beverly Sullivan stopped nailing a striped pillow and stepped down from the old chair she was using as a ladder. "Crazy is someone who doesn't understand that sometimes we need to do things that seem strange to protect those we love." "Protect who, Mom?" Luciana approached carefully. "There's no one here who needs protection." The old woman looked at her daughter-in-law with a deep sadness in her eyes. "Not yet, but there will be. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing." The discussion was interrupted by the arrival of Mrs. Gladys, who brought with her 3 other curious neighbors. "Beverly Sullivan, for God's sake, what is this?" asked Mrs. Beatrice, the oldest neighbor on the street. "You're turning your house into a, I don't even know what." "Into a pillow fortress," laughed Mrs. Tiffany, the youngest of the group. "I've never seen anything like it." Beverly Sullivan didn't answer. She climbed back onto the chair and continued her work. The old nails made a dry sound as they were hammered into the worn wood of the house. "She doesn't want to talk," Brenda Sullivan whispered to the neighbors. "She's been like this for weeks. Strange, reserved, buying all this old stuff. Do you think she's—" Mrs. Gladys made a circular gesture with her finger beside her head. "I don't know what to think anymore." Brenda began to cry. "My father always said that when she got older she might develop some mental problem. I think the time has come." Douglas Sullivan overheard the conversation and approached his mother again. "Mom, if you're having some problem, I can take you to a doctor. There's the local health clinic, there's the regional medical center. I don't have any problem, Douglas." Beverly Sullivan got down from the chair and stared at her son. The problem is with all of you who can't trust me. Trust you how? You're covering the house with junk. It's not junk. The elderly woman's voice came out louder, startling the neighbors. Each piece was chosen with care. Every pillow has its purpose. What purpose, Mom? Brenda dried her tears. Explain to me what purpose there is in covering a house with old pillows. Beverly Sullivan looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she sighed and shook her head. You're not ready to understand. Not yet. When will we be ready? Douglas was losing his patience. When the letters arrive. What letters? The letters that will explain everything. The enigmatic answer left everyone even more confused. Beverly Sullivan picked up another pillow from the pile she had prepared beside the house and went back to work. Mrs. Beverly, may I ask a question? Mrs. Beatrice approached carefully. Are you expecting someone? The elderly woman stopped hammering and looked at her neighbor with interest. Why do you ask? It's just, well, it seems like you're preparing the house for something special, as if you were expecting an important visitor. Beverly Sullivan smiled for the first time that day. You've always been the smartest one on the street, Mrs. Beatrice. So that's it? You're expecting a visitor? I'm waiting for what matters most in life. And what is that, Mum? Brenda approached, hopeful to finally understand. You'll know when the time is right. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of an old, noisy car. Out stepped Kenneth Sullivan, Beverly Sullivan's younger brother, accompanied by his wife, Valerie Sullivan. Beverly, what's this story they're telling around town? Kenneth looked at the house and his eyes widened. For God's sake, what have you done? I've done what needed to be done. This isn't normal, Beverly. It's a symptom of something serious. Valerie, who was a retired nurse, approached her sister-in-law with a professional air. Beverly Sullivan, have you been sleeping well? Eating properly? Taking your blood pressure medication? I'm fine, Valerie. I've never been better in my life. But look at this. Valerie gestured toward the house. This isn't normal behavior for someone who is well. Normal for whom? The question took everyone by surprise. Beverly Sullivan got down from the chair once more and faced the gathered family. You want to know if I'm well? I'm great. You want to know if I'm sick? I'm not. You want to know why I'm doing this? I won't tell. At least not now. Mom, Douglas tried a softer approach. Can you at least give us a clue? We're worried. Beverly Sullivan looked at her son with affection. The clue is in the letters that are going to arrive. When they arrive, you'll understand everything. What letters are these, Mom? Letters that will change our lives. Kenneth shook his head, visibly irritated. Beverly, you're speaking in riddles. That's not normal. I think we should take you to a doctor for some tests. I'm not going to any doctor. Beverly Sullivan's voice became firm. And you can't force me to do anything. Are you sure about that? Douglas Sullivan crossed his arms. Because if necessary, we can request a psychological evaluation. The threat made the elderly woman stop completely. She looked at her son with a mixture of sadness and disappointment. You would do that to me, Douglas? Would you really? If it's for your own good, yes, I would. Beverly Sullivan felt the tears well up in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Then do whatever you want. But you won't be able to stop me. She returned to work with renewed determination. The nails were now hammered with more force, as if each strike were a response to her family's questioning. The neighbor women exchanged glances, embarrassed by the family argument they were witnessing. I think we'd better leave, whispered Mrs. Gladys. Yes, let's let them sort this out as a family, agreed Mrs. Tiffany. But Mrs. Beatrice remained in place, watching Beverly Sullivan work. Can I help you with anything, Mrs. Beverly? The elderly woman stopped hammering and looked at her neighbor with surprise. You would do that? Of course, if it's important to you, there must be a good reason. There is, Beverly Sullivan smiled gratefully. There is the best reason in the world. Then tell me how I can help. I need someone to hold the pillows while I nail them. It's getting hard to do everything alone. Mrs. Beatrice nodded and stepped closer. Brenda Sullivan was indignant. Mrs. Beatrice, you can't encourage my mother's madness. Who said it's madness? The elderly neighbor faced Brenda firmly. Your mother is one of the most sensible women I know. If she's doing this, she must have a very good reason. What reason could she have for covering a house with old pillows? I don't know, but I know she has the right to do what she wants in her own home. The neighbor's unexpected defense strengthened Beverly Sullivan. She worked with more energy, now assisted by Mrs. Beatrice, who held each pillow in the right place. Douglas and Brenda Sullivan exchanged glances, unsure what to do. Kenneth and Valerie Sullivan decided to leave, promising to return the next day to resolve the situation. "This isn't over, Beverly," said Kenneth before getting in the car. "I'm going to talk to the doctor at the local health clinic. This behavior isn't normal." "Do whatever you want, Kenneth. Just don't forget that I'm your older sister, and I always took care of you when you were a child." The response silenced the man. He got in the car without another word and left with his wife. The day was ending when Beverly Sullivan and Mrs. Beatrice finished the front wall. The house now had a completely different appearance. The pillows of various sizes and colors created an irregular, padded surface. "It looks interesting," commented Mrs. Beatrice, admiring the work. "It looks the way it needs to look." Beverly Sullivan wiped her hands on her apron. "Thank you for your help." "You're welcome. Can I come back tomorrow to help with the other walls?" "You would do that?" "Of course. I'm curious to see what will happen when those mysterious letters arrive." Beverly Sullivan smiled. "You won't be disappointed." That night, after everyone had left, Beverly Sullivan sat on the porch, observing her work. The wall of pillows stood out in the darkness like a soft, protective shadow. She took an old letter she kept in her apron pocket and reread it for the 10th time that day. The words were already memorized, but she needed to be sure she hadn't forgotten any important detail. The letter was from Arthur Sullivan, her younger brother who had left for Chicago 15 years ago in search of a better life. In recent weeks, he had begun writing strange letters, telling of a difficult situation he was facing. The last paragraph of the most recent letter said, "Beverly, I don't know what else to do. The doctor said there's no other way, that she needs a special environment, without noise, without frights, without anything that could scare her. They want to admit her to a place far from me, but I can't let that happen. I remembered our house, the peace it always had there. Could I bring her to stay with you for a while? She needs a lot of care, Beverly. A lot." Mrs. Beverly Sullivan folded the letter and put it back in her pocket. Arthur didn't know she had begun the preparations even before receiving the official request. A deep intuition had guided every purchase, every decision, every pillow chosen. His granddaughter Daisy, Arthur's daughter, had developed a neurological condition that made her extremely sensitive to noise and impacts. The 11-year-old girl had begun having violent episodes whenever she heard loud sounds or got hurt, even slightly. The doctors from Chicago were recommending admission to a specialized institution, but Arthur didn't have the money to pay and couldn't bear the thought of being separated from his daughter. Mrs. Beverly Sullivan had understood immediately what needed to be done. The house would need to become a completely safe and silent environment to receive her granddaughter. The pillows weren't madness. They were a medical necessity. The next day, very early, Beverly Sullivan woke to the sound of raised voices on the street. Through the window, she saw that a small group of neighbors had gathered in front of her house, commenting on the construction from the previous day. "It's the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life," said Mr. Whitaker, the neighbor from the back. "Poor Mrs. Beverly. I think old age has caught up with her," commented Mrs. Mildred. "Or maybe she has some problem with her head," added Mr. Benson. Beverly Sullivan sighed. She knew the comments would only get worse as the work progressed. But she couldn't afford to care about gossip. Daisy would arrive in 2 weeks, and the house needed to be ready. Mrs. Beatrice appeared early, as promised, bringing a thermos of coffee and some sweet breads. "Good morning, Beverly. I brought a snack to give us energy for the work." "You're an angel, Mrs. Beatrice." "Which wall are we covering today?" "The right side. It's the one facing Mr. Whitaker's house where the noise is loudest." The two women drank coffee quickly and began the work. Mrs. Beatrice, despite being 75, proved to be an efficient and discreet helper. She held each pillow in place while Beverly Sullivan nailed them, without asking inconvenient questions. Around 10 o'clock, Brenda appeared accompanied by a younger woman whom Beverly Sullivan didn't know. "Mom, this is Dr. Taylor, a psychologist from the health center. She came to talk to you." Beverly Sullivan stepped down from the chair and eyed the professional with suspicion. "I didn't call any doctor." "I know, Mrs. Beverly," said the psychologist in a calm voice. "But your daughter is worried and asked me to check on you." "Check on me for what?" "To see if everything is all right with your mental health." "And what does the doctor think? Am I crazy?" The psychologist observed the elderly woman for a moment. Beverly Sullivan was clean, well-dressed, with her hair combed and her eyes clear and attentive. Her posture was erect, her speech articulate and coherent. "Can you explain to me why you are covering your house with pillows?" "I can, but I won't." "Why?" "Because it's nobody's business." The direct answer surprised the psychologist. Usually, people with mental problems were evasive or gave confusing explanations. Beverly Sullivan was being perfectly logical within her refusal. "Do you understand that this behavior is worrying your family?" "I understand, but they will understand everything soon enough." "When?" "When it's necessary." The psychologist tried a different approach. "Mrs. Beverly, can you tell me if you've been hearing voices or seeing things that other people don't see?" "No." "Have you been having trouble sleeping, eating?" "No." "Have you been feeling very sad or very euphoric?" "No, I'm normal." "Then why are you doing something so unusual?" Beverly Sullivan looked at the psychologist with a weary smile. "Doctor, do you have children?" "I do." "If one of your children needed something very specific to be well, would you do anything to get it?" "I would, of course." "Then you understand my situation." The answer left the psychologist thoughtful. There was something in Beverly Sullivan's words that suggested a deep and rational motivation behind her seemingly bizarre behavior. "Can you give me more details about this need?" "I cannot, not yet." "Why can't you?" "Because the right time hasn't come yet." The psychologist spent another hour talking with Beverly Sullivan, applying simple orientation and memory tests. To her surprise, the elderly woman proved to be perfectly lucid and oriented. There were no signs of dementia, psychosis, or severe depression. When she finished the evaluation, the psychologist called Brenda Sullivan for a private conversation. "Your mother is mentally well," she said frankly. "How is she well? Did you see what she's doing?" "I did, and it is strange indeed, but she is lucid, oriented, with perfect memory and no signs of serious psychiatric disorders." "Then why is she doing this madness?" "I don't know. But she implied she has a specific reason related to some family member who needs special care." Brenda thought for a moment. "She doesn't have anyone like that in the family. It's just us." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." "Then perhaps it's someone you don't know yet, or a situation that hasn't happened yet." "That doesn't make sense." "Many things in life don't make sense until they do." The psychologist put her materials away in her bag. "My recommendation is that you wait a little. If she doesn't have serious mental problems, she might really have a good reason for doing what she's doing. And if she doesn't, then we talk again. For now, she has the right to do what she wants in her own home, as long as she isn't hurting anyone." After the psychologist left, Brenda was even more confused. Part of her was relieved to know her mother wasn't sick, but another part felt frustrated for not being able to understand what was happening. "Mum, the doctor said you're fine in the head." "Because I am." Beverly Sullivan went back to work. "Then explain this pillow story to me." "I already said I'll explain when it's time." "And when will it be time?" "Soon, daughter, soon." Mrs. Beatrice, who had witnessed the entire conversation in silence, approached Brenda. "Dear, sometimes it's better to trust those with more life experience." "But don't you find all of this strange?" "I do, but your mother has always been a very sensible woman. If she's doing this, she must have a very good reason. Or she might be getting senile." "Didn't the doctors say she was well?" Brenda didn't know what to say. She helped the two elderly women finish the right side wall and left, promising to return the next day. For the rest of the week, the work continued. Beverly Sullivan and Mrs. Beatrice covered one wall per day, creating a kind of pillow cocoon around the small wooden house. Neighbors would stop to watch, some laughing, others shaking their heads in disapproval. Children ran by shouting "Crazy house," which hurt Beverly Sullivan deeply, but she didn't show it. On Thursday, the first serious incident happened. During a heavy rain in the early morning, several pillows got soaked and began dripping dirty water onto the porch. The smell of dampness and mold spread through the neighborhood. Mr. Whitaker, the neighbor from the back, knocked on Beverly Sullivan's door early in the morning. "Mrs. Beverly, I can't stand that awful smell coming from your house anymore." "It'll pass, Mr. Whitaker. It's just the pillows drying. And if they don't dry, what if they start growing bugs? What if they attract rats?" "None of that will happen." "Are you sure? Because if this mess starts affecting my house, I'll have to call the town hall." The threat frightened Beverly Sullivan. If the town hall got involved, her entire plan could be ruined. Daisy Sullivan would arrive in a week, and the house needed to be ready. "I'll take care of it, Mr. Whitaker. I promise." "I hope so, because this has gone too far." After the neighbor left, Beverly Sullivan sat on the porch, looking at the pillows dripping water. It was true that some smelled bad, and she knew the rain could ruin all the work. Mrs. Beatrice arrived and immediately noticed the problem. "We need to take out the wet pillows and put others in their place. I don't have money to buy others. What if we ask for help? There are many people in town who have old pillows stored away. No one will want to help. Everyone thinks I'm crazy." "I'll ask. Leave it to me." To Beverly Sullivan's surprise, Mrs. Beatrice spent the day visiting acquaintances and managed to collect over 20 pillows in good condition. Some people even offered to help with the work. "How did you manage it?" asked Beverly Sullivan, moved. "I told them you were preparing the house to welcome someone special who needed special care. I didn't give details, but I made it clear it was something important. And they believed it. Some did. Those who have faced hardships in life understood that sometimes we need to do strange things to care for those we love." On Saturday, 3 neighbors showed up to help: Mrs. Phyllis, Mrs. Joyce, and Mrs. Ethel. They were all older women who had raised children and grandchildren and understood what it meant to sacrifice for family. With the extra help, the work progressed quickly. In 2 days, the entire house was covered with pillows, creating a soft and silent structure. The final result was impressive. The house looked like a giant padded nest. "It looks nice," commented Mrs. Phyllis. "Different, but nice." "It looks like a giant dollhouse," said Mrs. Joyce. "It looks like a safe place," observed Mrs. Ethel. The last observation touched Beverly Sullivan deeply. That was exactly what she wanted: a safe place. On Sunday morning, Beverly Sullivan received a call from Arthur Sullivan. "Beverly, the results of Daisy's latest tests came in. The doctor confirmed she can't be in a normal environment. She needs a place without noise, without sharp corners, without anything that could hurt her during her episodes. When are you arriving?" "On Tuesday. The doctor cleared her to travel, but said if she doesn't improve in 2 weeks, she'll have to be admitted to a specialized hospital. She will improve, Arthur, I'm sure." "How can you be sure?" "Because I prepared everything with great care." "Prepared how?" "You'll see when you get here. The house is ready to welcome our girl." After hanging up the phone, Beverly Sullivan called her children and told them the truth about the pillows. Brenda Sullivan and Douglas Sullivan listened silently to the explanation about Daisy, her neurological condition, and the need for a completely safe and silent environment. "Why didn't you tell us this before?" asked Brenda Sullivan, with tears in her eyes. "Because you wouldn't have understood. You would have tried to convince me it was impossible, that it wouldn't work. But we could have helped. You can help now. Daisy arrives tomorrow." Douglas Sullivan shook his head, still processing the information. "Mom, you did all this alone, spent your own money, put up with everyone's criticism. For a granddaughter we barely know. I did it out of love, Douglas. The same love I feel for all of you." That night, Beverly Sullivan barely slept. In the morning, she cleaned the house, prepared the room that would be Daisy's, and baked the sweets the girl liked best, according to Arthur's letters. At 3 in the afternoon, an old bus stopped in front of the house. Out stepped Arthur, visibly thinner and worn down, and a thin blonde girl who clung to her father, her eyes wide with fear. "Beverly!" Arthur ran to hug his sister. "My dear brother." Beverly Sullivan hugged him tightly, feeling how he trembled. "And this is Daisy." Arthur knelt beside his daughter. "Daisy, This is Aunt Beverly I told you about. She prepared a very special house for you." The girl looked at Beverly Sullivan with suspicion, then at the house covered in pillows. "Why does the house have pillows, Auntie?" "So you'll be well protected, my dear." Daisy approached the wall and touched one of the pillows. Immediately, her face lit up. "It's soft." "Yes, it is. And quiet, too. Listen." Beverly Sullivan knocked on the wall of pillows. The sound was completely muffled, almost imperceptible. "Doesn't it hurt?" asked Daisy. "It doesn't hurt at all. You can touch them as much as you like." The girl began to explore the wall, touching different pillows, pressing some, hugging others. To Arthur's astonishment, she was smiling. "How long has it been since she smiled like that?" whispered Beverly Sullivan. "Months." Arthur began to cry. "A long time, Beverly." Brenda and Douglas arrived to meet their niece. They were moved to see how the pillow house had immediately transformed the girl's mood. "Auntie, can I go inside the house?" asked Daisy. "Of course you can. It's your home now." When they entered, Daisy discovered that Beverly Sullivan had covered the inside walls too, creating a completely padded environment. The girl ran from one side to the other, touching the walls, testing the softness, laughing as she hadn't in a long time. "Dad, look! If I fall, it doesn't hurt." "It's true." Arthur was amazed. Aunt Beverly thought of everything. That first night, Daisy slept soundly for the first time in months. Arthur sat by the bed, watching his daughter sleep in peace, without the constant nightmares and frights that had tormented her in Chicago. "How did you know?" he asked Beverly Sullivan, who brought tea for them both. "A grandmother's intuition, and a lot of research, too." "Research?" "I went to the public library, spoke with the retired teacher who understands these things. I learned that children with sensory hypersensitivity need very specific environments." "You did all this for a granddaughter you barely know." "I did it out of love, Arthur. Love doesn't need time to exist." In the following weeks, Daisy's transformation was remarkable. The pillow house became her perfect refuge. She could run, play, even have her episodes without getting hurt or frightened by noises. The neighbors who had criticized Beverly Sullivan began to understand the purpose behind the pillows. Many apologized and started praising the elderly woman's dedication. Mr. Whitaker, the most critical neighbor, appeared with a basket of fruit. "Mrs. Beverly, I've come to apologize for being so ignorant. You are a heroine." "I'm not a heroine, Mr. Whitaker. I'm just a grandmother who loves her granddaughter." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Mrs. Beatrice continued to be a constant presence in the house, helping to care for Daisy and becoming a kind of adoptive grandmother to the girl. "Aunt Beverly, why did people laugh when you made the pillow house?" Daisy asked one day. "Because they didn't understand why, my dear. And now they do? Now they understand that sometimes love makes us do things that seem strange, but are necessary." Daisy nodded, as if the explanation made perfect sense to her. 3 months later, when Arthur took his daughter for a follow-up appointment in Chicago, the doctor was impressed with the girl's improvement. The episodes had decreased drastically. She was sleeping well and had even started interacting more with other people. "What did you do?" asked the doctor. "The change is extraordinary." "My sister created a therapeutic environment," explained Arthur, "a house completely adapted to Daisy's needs." "How so?" Arthur showed pictures of the pillow house. The doctor studied the images with growing interest. "This is brilliant," he admitted. "You've essentially created a sensory room on a domestic scale. It's exactly the type of environment we recommend, but it costs a fortune to build professionally." "And did it work?" "Based on the test results and the girl's behavior, it worked perfectly. She can continue living in that environment. She won't need hospitalization." When they returned home, Arthur shared the good news with Beverly Sullivan. "The doctor said you invented a treatment that works better than many expensive clinics." "I didn't invent anything. I just used my heart. Your heart and a lot of intelligence, and the help of good people." Beverly Sullivan looked at Mrs. Beatrice, who was playing with Daisy in the backyard. 6 months after Daisy's arrival, the pillow house became an attraction in the small town. Other parents with children with special needs came to visit it to seek ideas and inspiration. Beverly Sullivan received an invitation to speak at a school about inclusion and special care. She accepted, nervous but determined to help other families. "What I learned," she said to the audience of parents and teachers, "is that sometimes the solution to the most complicated problems lies in the simplicity of love. We don't need a lot of money or advanced technology. We need dedication, research, and most importantly, the courage to do what others might find strange." A mother in the audience raised her hand. "But how did you find the courage to withstand everyone's criticism?" "I thought of my granddaughter, of how she was suffering. When you truly love someone, other people's opinions become secondary. And if it hadn't worked, then I would have tried something else, and then something else, until it worked." The answer drew applause from the audience. After the talk, several people approached to share their own stories and ask for advice. Beverly Sullivan listened to each one carefully and offered what she could: experience, encouragement, and, most importantly, hope. 1 year later, Daisy was completely adapted to life in the small town. She attended the local school where the teachers had learned to handle her special needs. She had friends, played in the yard, and, most importantly, smiled every day. The Pillow House had become a symbol in the community, no longer of madness or eccentricity, but of dedication and unconditional love. Arthur found work in the town and decided to stay permanently. He renovated the house next door, which had been abandoned, and moved there with Daisy, keeping her always close to the aunt who had saved his daughter. "Beverly, how can I thank you for all this?" he asked one day. "By letting Daisy be happy. That's the only thanks I need." During a conversation with Mrs. Beatrice, Beverly Sullivan reflected on the whole experience. "You know what struck me the most in this whole story," she said. "What?" "How easy it is to judge without knowing the truth. How many times in life do we do that to other people?" "Many times," agreed Mrs. Beatrice. "I've done it myself. I learned that sometimes the most important things in life seem crazy to those who don't understand the context, and that true love doesn't care about other people's opinions." Exactly. True love only cares about the well-being of the ones we love. 2 years later, a journalist from a national magazine heard the story and came to do a report on the Pillow House. The article was published under the title, "The Grandmother Who Created a Miracle with Old Pillows." The report had a national impact, and Beverly Sullivan began receiving letters from families all over the country, all dealing with similar situations. She answered each letter by hand, offering support and sharing her experience. A foundation supporting special needs children invited her to be a volunteer ambassador. She accepted, but with one condition: she would continue living in her Pillow House, taking care of Daisy. "Why don't you want to move to Chicago?" asked the foundation representative. "You'd have more resources there to help more people." "Because my most important work is here," Beverly Sullivan pointed to Daisy, who was playing in the yard. "Taking care of her is my priority. Helping other people is a consequence." Time passed and Daisy grew up, but she never lost her special affection for the Pillow House. Even when she no longer needed the sensory protections, she still found comfort in the environment her great-aunt had created with so much love. At 16, in a school essay about "the person I admire most," Daisy wrote about Beverly Sullivan, "My great-aunt is the bravest person I know. When I was little and very sick, she did something everyone thought was strange. She covered the entire house with old pillows. People laughed, criticized, even called her crazy. But she didn't give up, because she knew those pillows weren't trash. They were love, transformed into protection. She taught me that sometimes we need to be brave enough to seem crazy in the eyes of others, if it means taking care of the ones we love. The Pillow House saved me, but more than that, it taught me that true love is not ashamed of itself." When the teacher read the essay aloud, there wasn't a dry eye in the classroom. Beverly Sullivan, now 80 years old, continued caring for the Pillow House with the same dedication as always. Some pillows needed to be replaced from time to time, but she always found people willing to help. The house had become an informal tourist spot in the town. Visitors would stop to take pictures and hear the story. Local tour guides included the Pillow House in their itineraries, always telling the story of the grandmother who defied others' judgments for love. One Sunday morning, Beverly Sullivan was sitting on the porch when a young woman approached with a child in her arms. "Sorry to bother you," said the woman. "I'm little Leo's mother here. He has autism and I read about your story online. I came from far away to meet you." "You're welcome," Beverly Sullivan smiled. "How can I help you?" "My son has very strong meltdowns. The doctors say he needs a special environment, but I don't have the money to build one. Could you give me some tips?" Beverly Sullivan spent the whole afternoon talking with the young mother, explaining every detail of how she had built the Pillow House, where to find cheap materials, how to secure everything properly. "The most important thing," she said at the end, "is not to give up when people say you're crazy. They'll only understand later." "How did you handle the criticism?" "By remembering I wasn't doing it for them, I was doing it for Daisy." The woman left with a notebook full of notes and renewed hope. "You never get tired of helping, do you?" commented Mrs. Beatrice, who had witnessed the whole conversation. "How could I get tired of sharing love? The more you share, the more you have." That evening, Beverly Sullivan received a call from Arthur Sullivan. "Beverly, I have some news. Daisy passed her college entrance exams for psychology. She wants to specialize in therapy for special needs children." "How wonderful!" Beverly Sullivan was beaming. "She's going to help so many families." She said she wants to open a clinic with sensory rooms like our house. "And she'll succeed, I'm sure of it. You created a psychologist, Beverly. Daisy always says it was you who taught her about care and dedication." After hanging up, Beverly Sullivan kept thinking about how life takes interesting turns. The girl who had arrived traumatized and scared now wanted to dedicate her life to helping other children like her. At Daisy's graduation 3 years later, Beverly Sullivan was in the front row, prouder than she had ever felt in her life. During the class speech, Daisy asked to speak. "I want to dedicate my diploma to a very special person, my great-aunt Beverly Sullivan. She taught me that true love is capable of creating miracles. When I was a child, she covered an entire house with pillows to protect me. People laughed, but she didn't care. Today I know those pillows were more than physical protection. They were proof that someone loved me unconditionally. Now, I want to use what I've learned to help other children find their own pillow house." The entire auditorium gave a standing ovation. Beverly Sullivan cried with emotion, holding Mrs. Beatrice's hand firmly. After the graduation, a journalist approached Beverly Sullivan. "Mrs. Beverly, after all this, what is the biggest lesson you take from this experience?" "That love doesn't ask for permission to act, and that sometimes the most sensible thing we can do is to look crazy in the eyes of the world." "Would you do it all again?" "Without hesitation, 1,000 times if necessary." "And for people who are going through difficult situations with special needs children, what advice would you give?" "To trust their instinct as a mother, a father, a grandparent, to research, to seek help, but to never give up, and to not be afraid to do things that others might find strange. Sometimes the simplest solution is the one that works." 5 years after Daisy's graduation, the Pillow House remained a symbol in the community. Beverly Sullivan, now slower due to age, still took care of the maintenance with the help of volunteers. Daisy had opened her specialized clinic in Chicago, but returned every weekend to visit her aunt. The clinic was a success, with several sensory rooms inspired by the original Pillow House. "Auntie, I received a proposal to write a book about our story," Daisy said during one of these visits. "How interesting. Will you accept?" "Only if you write it with me. The story is more yours than mine." "The story is ours, dear, of the whole family." The book, The Pillow House, A Lesson in Unconditional Love, was launched 2 years later and became a national success. All proceeds were donated to institutions that care for special needs children. During the launch, a reporter asked Beverly Sullivan, "Mrs. Beverly, when you started covering the house with pillows, did you imagine the story would have this much impact?" "I didn't imagine anything. I just wanted my granddaughter to be okay." "And now seeing all this?" "Now I see that small gestures of love can create much bigger waves than we imagine." "What message do you want to leave?" To never be afraid to love differently. The world needs more people willing to look crazy for a good cause. That night, after all the events, Beverly Sullivan was alone on the porch of the Pillow House looking at the stars. Mrs. Beatrice had passed away 2 years prior, but her presence was still felt in every corner of the house. Arthur approached and sat beside his sister. Tired? Happy, she smiled. Very happy. Are you proud of what you did? I'm proud of what we did, because this was only possible with the help of many good people. Daisy is planning to have children. You're going to be a great-grandmother. What joy! And if any child needs special care, we already know what to do. Build another Pillow House. Build whatever is needed. Love always finds a way. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft sounds of the night, muffled by the pillows in the walls. Beverly, can I ask a question? Of course. When you started all this, were you afraid it wouldn't work? I was, but I was more afraid of not trying. And if people had kept laughing, then they would have kept laughing. But Daisy would have been protected, and that's what mattered. You are the bravest person I know. I'm not brave, Arthur. I'm just a grandmother who loves her granddaughter. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The following year, Beverly Sullivan received an honor from the local town hall. The Pillow House was declared the town's affectionate heritage and received a commemorative plaque. During the ceremony, the mayor said, "Mrs. Beverly taught us that sometimes the greatest life lessons come from gestures that, at first glance, seem incomprehensible. She turned old pillows into new hope." Beverly Sullivan, moved, thanked him. "I only did what any grandmother would do. The difference is I didn't give up when everyone doubted." A child in the audience shouted, "Aunt Beverly, you're a heroine." "I'm not a heroine, child. I'm a grandma who discovered that love has no limit." After the ceremony, several people approached to tell how the story of the Pillow House had inspired their own lives. Parents who had found creative solutions to help special children, grandparents who had become more active in raising their grandchildren, people who had learned not to judge different behaviors. An elderly lady approached with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Beverly, my grandson has ADHD and was very restless. After I heard your story, I decided to turn a room in the house into a special space for him, full of cushions and soft objects. The improvement has been incredible." "How wonderful to know that," Beverly Sullivan smiled. "See how love and creativity can solve so much? You inspired me not to be ashamed of doing different things for the good of my family. That is the most important lesson. True love is not ashamed." That night, Beverly Sullivan wrote in her diary, a habit she had developed after the whole experience. "Today I realize the Pillow House has become more than a place. It has become a symbol that it's possible to turn love into action, even when others don't understand. How many people give up on helping their family members because they fear the judgment of others? I hope our story encourages other people to be courageous in love." 2 months later, Beverly Sullivan received a letter that moved her deeply. It was from a mother from a rural town in the Northeast. "Mrs. Beverly, my daughter has cerebral palsy, and I didn't know what else to do. She cried a lot, didn't sleep well, was always agitated. When I read about the Pillow House, I decided to try something similar. I didn't have money to buy new pillows, so I asked for help at the church. People donated fabric scraps, old foam, used cushions. I transformed my daughter's room into a small version of your house. The result was miraculous. She is much calmer, sleeps better, even smiles more. I wanted to thank you for giving me the courage to do something everyone thought was strange. You saved my daughter too." Beverly Sullivan read the letter several times, her heart overflowing with joy. She showed it to Daisy Sullivan, who was visiting. "Auntie, your story is saving children you don't even know." "Our story, dear, ours. Don't you regret putting up with all the criticism at the beginning?" "I regret wasting time worrying about it. I should have ignored it from day one." "Why?" "Because those who truly love don't need anyone's approval." Daisy nodded, thoughtful. "You know, Auntie, at my clinic I see many parents who want to help their children but get stuck on what's normal or acceptable. Your story frees them to be creative. That's the idea, to show there's no right or wrong way to love. There's only to love or not to love. And you chose to love. Always, every day. By that time, the Pillow House had already inspired the creation of other therapeutic homes across the country. An informal network of families had formed, exchanging ideas and experiences on how to adapt home environments for children with special needs. Beverly Sullivan corresponded with many of these families, always offering encouragement and practical advice. Her kitchen table was always full of thank you letters, photos of adapted homes, and requests for help. One day, Arthur Sullivan commented, "Beverly, you've become the unofficial consultant for special families. I've become a grandmother sharing what she's learned. Don't you think about formalizing it, creating an organization, asking for government support?" "I don't need formalization to help. What's important is that families know they're not alone." "But with official support, you could help more people." "Arthur, when I covered this house with pillows, I didn't have anyone's support. I didn't need it. Sometimes the best things come from individual initiative." That same year, a university invited Beverly Sullivan to give a lecture on special care and family creativity. She accepted, nervous but determined. Before an audience of psychology, education, and occupational therapy students, Beverly Sullivan told her story simply and directly. "You will learn many scientific theories in your courses. You'll memorize complicated names and expensive treatments. But never forget that sometimes the solution lies in simple creativity and unconditional love." A student raised his hand. "Mrs. Beverly, how do you distinguish between a valid creative solution and an irresponsible attitude?" "By always asking, will this help or harm the one I love? If the answer is help, it doesn't matter if others find it strange. And if it goes wrong? Then you try something else. True love doesn't give up at the first difficulty." A university professor remarked after the lecture, "Mrs. Beverly, you gave a practical lesson in applied love. Our books talk about theory, but you showed how to turn love into concrete action." "It's just that I don't understand theories." "I understand my granddaughter." The simplicity of the answer drew laughter and applause from the audience. As the years passed, Beverly Sullivan began to feel the weight of age. Her movements became slower, her memory sometimes failed, but her determination remained intact. One winter morning, Daisy found her great-aunt sitting on the porch, looking at the Pillow House with a nostalgic smile. "What are you thinking about, Auntie?" "I'm thinking about how it all began. I remember the first pillow I nailed to this wall." "Do you regret anything?" "I regret not doing it sooner. How many children could have been helped if I had started earlier?" "You did it at the right time. At my right time." "That's true." Beverly Sullivan took Daisy's hand. "And you? What will you do with all you've learned?" "I'll continue your work. In my own way, but I'll continue." "How?" "I'm planning to create a foundation to teach families how to adapt their homes for special needs children. It will be called the Pillow House Foundation." Beverly Sullivan felt her eyes fill with tears. "I'm so proud, my girl, and I want you to be the honorary president." "Me? But I don't understand anything about foundations." "You understand love. That's the only qualification needed." 2 years later, the Pillow House Foundation was officially inaugurated. The event took place in the backyard of the original house, with the participation of dozens of families who had been inspired by the story. During her inaugural speech, Daisy Sullivan said, "This foundation was born from the seemingly crazy gesture of a grandmother who covered her house with old pillows. She taught us that no love is too small to make a difference, and no gesture is too simple to change a life." Beverly Sullivan, now 85 years old, watched from a special chair, surrounded by people who had become her extended family over the years. A reporter approached. "Mrs. Beverly, how do you feel seeing your initiative become a foundation?" "I feel that love multiplies when it is shared." "What is your greatest pride in this whole story?" "Seeing that Daisy grew up healthy and happy. Everything else is a consequence." "And what would you say to those going through difficult situations with special needs children?" "To trust in the power of creative love, and to not be afraid of looking different." That night, after everyone had left, Beverly Sullivan was alone on the porch of the Pillow House. The walls were still firm and padded, silent witnesses to a journey that had begun with judgment and ended with recognition. She picked up an old photo of Daisy as a child, scared and fragile, and compared it to the strong, determined woman she had become. The contrast was striking. Every criticism, every laugh, every moment of doubt was worth it, she thought. It was worth it, because love is always worth it. Arthur Sullivan appeared with a cup of hot tea. "Can't sleep." "I don't want to sleep. I want to stay here remembering everything." "What do you remember most?" "The neighbors who helped me when everyone laughed. Mrs. Beatrice, who was the first to believe. Your arrival with Daisy. Her first smile after months." "And the difficulties?" "The difficulties, too. They were part of the story." "Would you do everything the same?" "I would do everything the same, but with less fear. It took me too long to stop caring about other people's opinions. The important thing is that you stopped, yes, and Daisy grew up in a house full of unconditional love." The following year, Beverly Sullivan received a national tribute for her contribution to the cause of special needs children. The ceremony took place in Chicago, but she asked to participate via video conference as she did not want to leave the vicinity of her Pillow House. During the tribute, she said, "I have received many compliments over these years, but I want to make it clear I did nothing extraordinary. I only did what any person who loves would do. I looked for a solution to help someone in need. The difference is that I didn't give up when others doubted." The ceremony host asked, "What legacy do you want to leave?" "I want people to understand that love doesn't come with an instruction manual. Every family needs to find its own way to care for, protect, and love. And they should not be afraid to be different in that process. Any final message?" "Yes. To all the fathers, mothers, grandparents, and family members who are fighting for someone special, you are not alone. And remember, sometimes the most sensible thing we can do is to look crazy in the eyes of the world." After the tribute, hundreds of messages arrived for Beverly Sullivan. Families from across the country shared their own stories of overcoming and creativity in caring for special needs children. One particular message moved her deeply. "Mrs. Beverly, I am the father of an autistic boy. When I heard your story, I decided to create a pillow room in our small apartment. My wife thought I had lost my mind. The neighbors complained about the noise from the renovations. My parents said it was a waste of money. But I kept going, inspired by your courage. Today, 3 years later, my son is much better. The room became our refuge, the place where he feels safe. My wife apologizes to me every week for having doubted. Thank you for teaching me that love doesn't need anyone else's approval." Beverly Sullivan read the message to Daisy Sullivan, who was pregnant with her first child. "Auntie, you started a quiet revolution. Entire families are being transformed by your courage." "Our courage, dear, of everyone who believed." "And what if my baby needs special care?" "Then we'll create the solution he needs together, without fear of judgment, without fear of anything. True love is brave." 6 months later, Beverly Sullivan's great-grandson was born perfectly healthy. But she kept a room in the house prepared with cushions and pillows, just in case, as she liked to say. "You never know when someone might need a pillow hug," she would explain to anyone who asked. One Sunday afternoon, as she watched Daisy play with her young son in the backyard, Beverly Sullivan reflected on the entire journey. Mrs. Gladys, now also a very elderly lady, approached. "Beverly, do you remember when all this started?" "How could I forget? You almost dropped your coffee cup in shock. I deeply regret having laughed at the beginning." "No need for regrets. You couldn't have known. But we could have trusted more. What matters is that in the end, everyone understood. You taught us a valuable lesson about not judging people. Life taught us. I was just an example." That day, Beverly Sullivan decided to write a letter to herself, to record her final feelings about the whole experience. To the Beverly who covered the house with pillows, you did the right thing. No matter how many people laughed, doubted, or criticized, you followed your heart and saved a girl. More than that, you showed the world that unconditional love is capable of creating solutions that no scientific manual teaches. Don't regret any moment of doubt you had. They were part of the growth process. Don't regret the resources you spent, the time you lost convincing others, or the tears you shed in moments of loneliness. Today, looking back, you can be sure, every pillow nailed up was an act of pure love. Every criticism endured was a small price for Daisy's happiness. Every day of work was an investment in the future of a special child. You proved that a determined grandmother can change the world, at least the world of one granddaughter. And that is everything. With love and admiration, the Beverly of today. 2 years later, at 87 years old, Beverly Sullivan still lived in the Pillow House, now cared for by Daisy and Arthur Sullivan. Her mobility had decreased, but her spirit remained strong. The Pillow House Foundation had grown and was now helping hundreds of families a year. The creative home adaptation model had been studied by universities and adopted by several institutions. One especially sunny morning, Beverly Sullivan woke with a strange feeling of completeness, as if she knew she had fulfilled her life's mission. She called Daisy for a talk. "My dear, I need to tell you some important things." "Of course, Auntie. What is it?" "I want you to know these have been the happiest years of my life. From when you arrived here, scared and small, until today, seeing you strong and helping other children." "Auntie, are you okay?" "I'm wonderful. I just want to make sure you understood the important lessons." "What lessons?" "That love has no limits, that family is sacred, that we should always fight for those we love, no matter what others think." Daisy held her great-grandmother's hand. "I learned all those lessons, Auntie, and I'll teach them to my son too. And if one day someone in the family needs special care, I'll create whatever solution is necessary, without fear, without shame. Even if others find it strange, especially if others find it strange. You taught me that the best things in life are often misunderstood at first." Beverly Sullivan smiled with satisfaction. "Then my work here is done." That afternoon, Beverly Sullivan fell asleep on the porch, surrounded by the pillow house she had built with so much love. When Arthur Sullivan went to call her for dinner, she had passed away peacefully with a serene smile on her face. The wake was held at the house itself, as she had requested. Hundreds of people came to pay their respects. Neighbors who had learned not to judge, families who had been inspired by her story, professionals who had studied her method, children who had benefited from similar home adaptations. Daisy, despite her grief, made sure to speak during the ceremony. "My great-grandmother left us much more than just memories. She left us an example that unconditional love is capable of overcoming any obstacle. The Pillow House will continue to stand, not just as her physical creation, but as a symbol that we must have the courage to love differently when necessary." Mr. Whitaker, the neighbor who had criticized her the most at the beginning, asked to speak. "Mrs. Beverly taught me the greatest lesson of my life. Never judge someone until you know their full story. She wasn't crazy. She was being a mother in the purest sense of the word." After the funeral, the family decided to keep the Pillow House exactly as Beverly Sullivan had left it. Daisy moved there with her son, continuing the tradition of caring for the special space. The Pillow House Foundation grew even more, inspiring the creation of public policies for home adaptation for families with special needs children. Beverly Sullivan's method was officially recognized as Creative Domestic Environmental Therapy. 5 years after her passing, a documentary about the story was produced and aired nationally. The title was The Pillow Grandmother, A Lesson in Unconditional Love. The film featured testimonials from dozens of families who had adapted their homes inspired by the original story. It also showed Daisy's growth, her training as a psychologist, and her current work helping other families. In the final scene of the documentary, Daisy, now a mother of 2, was sitting on the porch of the Pillow House, exactly where Beverly Sullivan used to be. "What my great-grandmother taught us," she said, looking at the camera, "is that true love doesn't ask for permission to act. She didn't wait for anyone's approval to protect me. She didn't consult manuals or experts. She followed her maternal instinct and created a solution that changed my life and inspired thousands of other families." What is the main lesson she left? That sometimes we need to have the courage to seem crazy if it means protecting those we love, and that no gesture is too small when it comes to unconditional love. The documentary ended with images of the pillow house at sunset, still sturdy and welcoming, with children playing in the yard and families visiting the place that had become a sanctuary of family love. A plaque at the entrance to the house bore the words chosen by Daisy. Here lived Beverly Sullivan, who taught us that love has no instruction manual. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the ones that work best. Sometimes seeming crazy is the sanest thing to do. End of story. This was a fictional story created to touch our hearts. Now tell us what you thought. Do you believe Beverly Sullivan made the right decision by ignoring the neighbor's criticism? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to do something others didn't understand out of love for your family? Share your experience in the comments with sincere words. We will be delighted to read your opinion and your story. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.